And now it's time for Ag Geek Speak with
GK Technologies,
Sarah and Jody.
In the fields again. I just can't wait to get in the fields again. The life I love is spreading potash for my friends, and I can't wait to get in the fields again. No, I can't wait to get in the fields again.
And welcome back to Ag Geek Speak. Jody and I had a great conversation on the last episode. We're just kind of recapping this very interesting spring of 2026. It's been presented us with many challenges over the last few months here. Everything from crazy fertilizer prices, extreme weather, and interesting markets. So being a farmer these days, not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. But we are honored to have the opportunity to work with each and every single one of you, whether you're a farmer or an agronomist or an ag retailer. So it's just a great industry to be part of. And certainly even at this time, even with all the challenges that are getting faced. But we wrapped up our last episode when we were talking about, some of the issues that we saw in the spring. And one of the things that happened is it feels like there's a huge willingness to want to start to adopt precision agriculture and variable rate technology in particular. And so we worked with a number of new people this year. And one of the challenges is, how do you get started with precision agriculture?
That is the $1 million question, right? Because I think we all have an idea in our head of like, all right, I know what my field looks like. I know where I'd like to apply more fertilizer, and I know where I'd like to apply less. I know where I could reduce my corn seed population, absolutely. And then I know where I'd like to have more of it so I can maximize yield there, increase yield there. But then the question is, how do I actually take that image of what the field is in my head, even translate that simply to something that my planter or my fertilizer spreader can actually use to vary it, right? And so I think it's important just to kind of outline this first and talk about what are the kind of steps in this process and what are the things that need to happen in order for that to be.
So Jody, I think you bring up some great points about where do you even start and what are some of the things that you need to get started. First of all, and I think you brought this up in the last episode, how do you ask good questions about what's going on in your farm? If you look across your landscape on any given field, does the hilltop yield the same as the low area? Does your pothole yield the same as your more productive ground? No. So why would you fertilize them the same? So ask yourself questions about what is going on in your field. And here's the other challenge that I think especially other professionals have in the industry is you could be an agronomist and understand exactly how things are changing and be super agronomically solid, but maybe you don't know how to run that computer component of it and translate that across and bring it to life. If you want to learn how to do precision agriculture, you could call up GK Technology and we can help you learn how to run the software or we can make the maps for you. Either one is fine. I have made maps for people who are really good at computer stuff, but they're running some pretty big operations, whether that's their agronomy operation, whether that's their farm. They just seriously don't have time to sit behind the computer and make it go. And here's the other thing. I think in today's world, we get caught up in thinking that making a prescription map is literally going to take 10 minutes. Is that seriously as much time as you think about spending your $900 urea? Or do you think you should take a little bit more time than that? And certainly when I'm making my recommendations for my growers, it does take me more time than that to get everything translated over and to make it go.
Yep. And I do want to spend just a little bit of time right here thinking about like when we talk about a map and a prescription and a controller, et cetera, I do just want to spend a little bit of time talking about what this whole process looks like, or like what are the generic steps or things that are necessary to go from having an idea of the variability in your head to something that the planter can read and use, or your fertilizer spreader can read and use. Really, the first part is defining your field, right? Like if we're going to make a map for you here at GK, we need to know, if there's been recent changes to it. We need to know about that boundary. We can get a lot from nape imagery, or even local imagery, but we need to know what that boundary needs to be for the field. You're planning to split the field in half and do 2 different crops. We need to know that. So we need to have a definition of what the field is we're working with.
And so often that boundary ends up being a cookie cutter for everything. So we do have to have an accurate boundary. We can draw one. We could take a boundary that you've got, but we do have to get a boundary. That's a great
boundaries are important.
Yes.
So then the next thing that we talk a lot about the concept of a map. And let's be clear, there are a lot of different maps that exist in this precision ag world. There are maps that define the field as to how we're going to vary the field and split it up. Here at GK, we make zone maps that are based on field variability, oftentimes based very much on imagery, or we can also bring other factors in like yield data, EC, salinity data, topography, hill shade, etc. But really what that initial zone map is defining the variability of the field, giving us a template for how we can then vary our inputs.
Oh, I was going to say, I do think we need to bring up the fact that we also work with grid sample maps as well. And you can get some definition about the field from grid sampling as well. Grid sampling is more of a trend down in Iowa and Illinois and those areas, and North Dakota, Montana, and then going up into Canada is more zone maps. But sometimes they get used in different places. But you have to have something that helps you create the definition of the variability across the landscape.
Yes. After the boundary, we have to have a map that is describing the variability of the field, whether that be zones via imagery or grids that have soil test data that define the field's variability. We need something there that gives us a template of how we're going to vary our inputs across the field. So after we have that initial variability map, we'll call it that, we're going to create something called a prescription map. And what that looks like is basically just saying, okay, in these different zones, in these high-yielding zones, we're going to put high-yielding zones or high-yielding areas of the field, we're going to put a higher rate of corn or a higher rate of fertilizer. We can create that map that has inputs that vary given the variability of the variability map. One thing you really have to keep in mind is that not all prescriptions are created equally. And what do I mean by this? If you're working with anybody that's making maps for you, they're going to ask you, what controller do you have in your tractor? Because here's the deal. When we're making these fertilizer maps, it's in one language, but then we have to translate that to the language that your controller speaks in. And the controllers, depending on what they are, they're going to speak that language a little bit differently than other controllers. So like a Trimble versus a Raven, whatever. They read it a little bit differently. So when we write a prescription, we're basically just translating it from one language to another so that it can be read by your tractor. And so we need to know what type of controller it is. And like specifically, like not just a Viper, we need to know if it's a Viper Pro, you need to know if it's a Viper Plus. There can, like, sometimes that makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. But like those kind of details are important. So it's important to know what controller you have that's making these changes in the field.
Yeah, I just want to pile on a little bit there. The way that I write a prescription to a case controller, to a Trimble controller, to a John Deere controller, to a Raven controller, yes, even to a Falcon 2 controller, it's all different. And I just got to state this because I've had a couple of times I've had it said to me, well, it just takes a shapefile. Yeah, generally, I'd say a shapefile format is probably the standard file format, but the way that you write that shapefile can be a lot different depending upon which controller you're going to.
And even making the map before you even export it as a prescription is going to be different based on is your controller good with a lot of polygons and a lot of different data in your shapefile? Or is it can only handle a small amount of data? Like those, yes, it can handle a shapefile, but there are levels of capability here that when you tell us what you have, we can work that out for you. That's no problem. But we just need to know what it is. But getting back to like the basis of what we're trying to get at and like what we need to go from you having a field to you having something that you can put into your tractor. So just simply going from the point A of you having a field that you want to do VRT on to the end, or like you've got a variability map that describes the variability of the field. You know where the fertilizer or other input is going to vary across the field. And that's in a prescription that the controller that you're using can read. It gets into your controller. It's there in your controller on the tractor. And then it's in the field telling the specific piece of equipment how to vary it across the field. That's what we're getting at when we're helping you make a map or you're making your own map. Those are kind of the pieces of the puzzle that need to be there in order for it to go from point A to point B.
You nailed it. That's what we got to do.
I think it's important to have that framework in mind because I want you all to know if you're new to this, that it's both more complicated and more simple.
I think you're right on though, Jody. It is, when you really start breaking down all the steps and everything that it takes to get from starting with nothing, flat rating, to actually variable rating a product, there are some steps in there. And so I highly recommend that people work with somebody, especially the first time, on just how to get from point A to point B. I honestly think that my role as an agronomist now is one of being a precision agriculture consultant, where I help people figure those things out, how to get from point A to point B with wherever you want to fit your business into variable rate technology. Maybe you're the guy making the map. Maybe you're the guy, maybe you don't want to have anything to do with maps. You're just going to put the prescriptions into your tractor and that's going to be enough. But there's ways in there that you can work with consultants.
That is the reality of 2026 is that more and more people have the variable rate technology capabilities in their tractors. And it is becoming a more commonly adopted practice. And like we mentioned in the last episode, with the economic incentives that are in place, there's really the drive and demand to implement these systems and to take account of more of the variability that exists in our fields. And there are people that'll help you figure it out. And there are people that will help you make it so that you can make variable rate happen on your fields. Or as an agronomist, there are people that can help teach you how to do it yourself if that's something you're interested in. That's what we're here for. At least in the context of ADMS. I mean, that's what a lot of my role is helping people learn how to run the software and make maps for themselves.
Absolutely.
It just depends on what you want to do, where you want to get started.
Yeah. So it's been it's been kind of an interesting spring. Definitely some interest in seed, variable rate seed this spring. And when seed prices are as high as they are, it's also a great way to help manage the input costs. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that someone can use variable rate seed. And I definitely have been answering some questions this spring, specifically for corn and soybean seed, especially. Corn seed on those droughty hilltops or sandier hilltops. I really like to try to drop that population down a little bit. And what's fun with that is it helps us, you reduce that population. There's less competition in that sandier area where there's less water to start with. And then not only does it help you reduce your input costs in that area, but a lot of times the flip side of it is you're actually getting a little bit better yield too, because you needed that reduction in that spot so that there was enough moisture for the plants that were out there. So if anybody wants to figure out a place to start with variable rate seed and they're raising corn, corn and soybeans or whatever else, I think that's like the easiest slam dunk place to start. Variable rate your corn seed.
That's such a great point, Sarah. And I'm so glad you brought that up about like, what's the lowest hanging fruit that we can grab for when we're trying to implement precision agriculture? And variable rate seeding is a really great place to start. Corn and soybeans is probably where the most data is available in terms of return on investment. But as long as you can, if you've got a planter where you can vary the population specifically. So like corn, for example, commonly you can see 20,000 to 34,000. Do not take this as gospel for your area because this varies widely. So Western North Dakota versus Illinois. So just as an example, so like population wise for planters, but like there's a lot of air seeders that are still out here in North Dakota. So just remember, you can also vary by poundage and just make sure that you know what the seed weight is or like how many seeds of soybean or canola or other crop that you're trying to variable rate. Have an idea of how many seeds are per pound so you can appropriately change the population or like get to the target rate that you're looking for.
So, Jody, you just brought up a really good point on air seeders and drills, especially air seeders. I think air seeders get overlooked as an opportunity for variable rate a lot. There's so many things that you can do with air seeders for variable rate applications. It's interesting as you go west out to like Montana, they've got these huge Burgo carts out there, absolutely gargantuan. They're super awesome. If you've never seen one, you got to go and check them out. They're huge. And by the way, I'm not diminishing any other brands that are out there, but they've got, 4 big tanks and they're carrying, all of their fertilizer, all of their seed, everything in one pass. But when you go out west, I mean, in Montana, I've helped people soil sample 2-section fields, one field being 2 sections. So they load up and they go. And goodness gracious, you're going to drive 2 miles with this thing before you turn around and come back. So if you're leaving all of your refilling stations on just one headland, that's a lot of acres that you're covering in one round. So they need to be large pieces of equipment. But you can variable rate each one of those tanks. It gives you an opportunity to variable rate your seed, variable rate fertilizer that's going down with that pass. So, take advantage of that. In areas where there is soybeans and there is soybeans that get planted with air seeders, and there's a lot of that. In areas even with iron chlorosis, one of the things that we've played with a little bit is variable rating the seed. You can increase your seeding rate in the area where the iron chlorosis is tougher. I have worked with some guys that have played around with doing planting both offensive and defensive varieties. You actually create 2 prescriptions, one for your offensive variety and one for your defensive variety. They should be mirror images of each other, and then you assign them to the tanks. It works really, really well. A variable rate soy green, not just for liquid with a planter, but also they do have granular iron EDDHA products on the market today that could go down with an air seeder as well. So there's so many opportunities with an air seeder, and I do feel like they get overlooked a lot, and especially when you move to the western territories of North Dakota, where you end up in that wheat neck of the woods.
And how I'm thinking about this right now is like, if you're worried that you are limited by your equipment in terms of what you can, like how precise you can get, rethink that. What I mean by that is like, if you're like, well, I don't have specific control of every single shank or every single opening, it's not worth it for me to do precision agriculture. No, I disagree with that. Even like I know we're just talking about big giant plant or big giant air seeders, but even varying it based on the width of your planter, that's a huge amount of variability that you could be accounting for in your field that you weren't before. Or if you're thinking, well, my planter or my tractor didn't come with a rate controller, that's okay. You can get aftermarket controllers that are even older than 5 years that still can work with your setup. Look at Ag Talk, Google. It's amazing how helpful those can be to implement precision agriculture controllers to your current settings. You don't have to have the latest and greatest for this to work. You can make this work on what you have. And there might be some examples of like really, really, really old stuff that you can't VRT. But think about like what the point I want to make here is like, think about what your current setup is. And if it's If it's fertilizer, does the fertilizer have, or like the spreader itself, have the capability to change output based on a computer? That's going to be your limitation, right? Is there something that I can connect to that can vary the output? That'll be the piece to look for. And then look for something that can connect into it.
But Jody, I think you are bringing up a huge point. There are some opportunities with older equipment that's on the marketplace that can still variable rate really well. We have people that still use Falcon 2 controllers that, yep, there's some personality things with them that they're old, but we can figure out how to make that go for you. I know for sure that we can export to pretty much anything that has ever been on the market since the beginning of variable rate technology in the 1990s. And so if you find something out there, just go for it. And even if it's not a super detailed map, but you know areas, let's say that your rate range for your urea, let's just say you're doing a straight urea map of some kind. Let's say your rate range is like 50 pounds to 200 pounds. If all you had was those two rates in that field, think about the economics of saving yourself money. The other thing to think about is variable rate has now been in the marketplace for a while. And a lot of our commercial applicators and fertilizer plants probably have traded in, or, they might have gotten rid of some of their older fertilizer spreaders. And maybe it's not fitting for them, but maybe it's a used piece of equipment that a farmer can actually pick up and bring out to his farming operation, and it will work just fine for what they're doing. If that's a fit for you, go and check it out. It doesn't have to be the newest and the flashiest thing. As a matter of fact, some of my favorite controllers still are some of the older controllers in certain situations. Not always, but I think we all get to be a little bit biased in this industry as to which controllers we like writing prescriptions for, but doesn't matter whether I like them or not. It's like a school teacher. You have to take care of all of the children in your classroom, even the troublemakers. And we do that here too with all of the controllers on the marketplace. How's that? How's that, Jody?
That is a surprisingly good metaphor. That's actually kind of freaking me out a little bit.
I'm here all day. That's also a really big, important spring recap conversation piece right there. We work with all the controllers, even the problem children.
Yes. And that's kind of the thing too, is like, I can't emphasize enough, spending some time on Google or calling somebody that's knowledgeable about controllers. And I will not say that that's me. I do not know. I know a lot about...
I know really smart people where I can ask questions. And yes, they actually work here at GK. I will say that at GK, because of how old our software is, we probably have written prescriptions to probably every single controller that's ever been in the marketplace. That's a pretty big claim, but I bet it's pretty close.
Yep. Yeah. And doing some Googling about a controller that you've or you're planning to purchase, read some forums, do some Googling, call your friend that has the same controller. That's going to get you so far. And then also just some experimenting. And the hard thing too is, like, we're not going to be able to predict everything that's going to be compatible or not compatible with some of these controllers. Sometimes weird things happen with controllers too. Say a different constellation of satellites is now used for GPS and it's no longer suitable for the old set of controllers. There are some things that we just are unknown, right? That we're never going to be able to predict. And maybe you run across some of those issues with older controllers, but do some research, figure out what people are using, implement it, test it, try it. If you know how to run one, you're going to get the basics down of maybe a different brand has a different screen setting, etc. But they're still working on the same basic structure of bringing in a GPS satellite, reading a prescription, and making the tractor and the implement do something. So getting comfortable around one is going to help you get comfort around a different one too. So experiment, no one in this industry ever went in knowing exactly what they were doing.
I think
To be
this
honest.
industry is still trying to figure out like how to
Yeah.
make things work well across
Yep.
everybody. I
And
really do.
unfortunately, yeah. And I mean, again, because we're working with software on the controller, software with map baking, there's things that, do change a little bit more than in other parts of the ag industry. And that's just the nature of the game that we're playing in. But it's not it's not a reason to not implement it and start varying your inputs more to lessen the burden of the current economic situation.
Be more efficient with your inputs. I am thinking right now, if there is anything that the marketplace is demanding, it's that the farmer is as efficient as he possibly can be with his inputs, which is interesting to me because as I look back, I don't think there was a lot of slough room in there anyway. But here we are. And so I think a guy's got to take it up to the next level if you possibly can.
Absolutely. And if you're ready to take the next step and you want some help in making your own maps or having somebody make maps for you, do give us at GK a call. We can absolutely help you with that and help you take advantage of being more efficient with your logistics via variable rate applications.
If you are interested in visiting with us so that we could try to help you figure out how to help your farm, go to our website. All of our contact information is on there for the entire GK staff. We can help you figure out how to make things go. That's what we're here for. We've got drainage experts. We've got us. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today and joining us as we recap the 2026 spring season. And we hope that you have a fantastic rest of the growing season and hope that you join us again here on Ag Geek Speak. And remember, with GK Technology, we have a map
And an app
for that.
No, I can't wait to get in the fields again.
Let the geeks at GK Technology help you with your agricultural data. Their agronomists know agriculture. When it comes to creating soils and zone maps to maximize yields in your fields, you can trust the people with decades of experience in site-specific agriculture. Everyone at GK Technology has a background in agriculture, so they know what makes a farm run, and they speak your language. The geeks at GK Technology have a map and an app for that.